The unexpected news. I still remember the day it all started. The day that flipped our world upside down. If you had told me years ago that my husband, Daniel, would be the one carrying our child, I would have laughed it off as science fiction. But life has a way of surprising us in the most unexpected ways. Daniel and I had been married for 5 years, a strong and happy couple. We had talked about starting a family countless times, but there was one small problem. I was medically infertile. I had known since I was a teenager that conceiving naturally would be impossible for me. It was a hard truth to accept, but Daniel had always been my biggest supporter, assuring me that no matter what, we would find a way to build our family. So when medical advancements in reproductive technology began pushing boundaries beyond what anyone thought possible, we dared to hope. A new possibility. One evening after dinner, Daniel sat me down with a serious expression. "I need you to read this," he said, handing me his tablet. I looked at the screen, my eyes scanning over the words. Experimental male pregnancy trial. A groundbreaking step in reproductive science. I froze. My mind struggled to process what I was reading. "Daniel, what is this?" I asked cautiously. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's a clinical trial, Sam. A team of doctors has developed a method where a biological male can carry a child using an artificial womb system. It's early-stage research, but they're looking for volunteers." My heart pounded. Was he seriously considering this? "And you're thinking of applying?" He nodded slowly. "I know it sounds crazy, but Sam, this could be our chance." I didn't know what to say. A million thoughts ran through my head. Was it safe? Was it ethical? Would it even work? "Daniel, this is huge," I finally managed. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" He took my hand, his eyes full of determination. "If there's a chance that we can have a child together, then yes. I want this." And just like that, our journey began. Entering the unknown. The next few weeks were a blur of medical appointments, tests, and consultations with specialists. The procedure was still in its experimental phase, but the doctors were confident. The process involved implanting an artificial gestational sac within Daniel's abdominal cavity, connected to his body's circulatory system. Through a combination of hormonal treatments and medical technology, his body would support the pregnancy just like a biological womb would. It all sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie, but the science was real. Despite all the assurances from the medical team, I still worried. What if something goes wrong? I asked him one night as we lay in bed. He squeezed my hand. "Then we'll face it together." His confidence both reassured and terrified me. A few weeks later, the procedure was performed, and our embryo was implanted. It was official. Daniel was pregnant. The first signs. At first, nothing changed. Daniel went about his daily life as usual, going to work, exercising, and teasing me about how he was technically doing all the hard work now. But then, the symptoms started. The nausea hit first. One morning, I woke up to the sound of gagging from the bathroom. I rushed in to find Daniel hunched over the toilet, his face pale and sweating. "Morning sickness?" I asked, half in disbelief. He groaned. "This is not how I imagined pregnancy." I knelt beside him, rubbing his back. "Guess we're really doing this, huh?" He chuckled weakly. No turning back now. Over the next few weeks, the symptoms intensified. Fatigue, food cravings, mood swings. I had read all about pregnancy symptoms, but experiencing them with my husband was surreal. One night, as we sat on the couch, Daniel turned to me with a serious expression. "I'm craving strawberries." I laughed. "Okay, I'll get some tomorrow." He frowned. "No, Sam. I need them. Right now." It was nearly midnight, but I found myself driving to the nearest 24-hour grocery store, picking up 3 cartons of strawberries. When I got back, Daniel grabbed them like a man starving and started eating immediately. "These are life-changing," he mumbled between bites. I couldn't help but laugh. "You're ridiculous." He smirked. You signed up for this. And honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way. A new reality. As time passed, Daniel's body changed in ways neither of us had anticipated. His stomach began to swell, a small but undeniable bump forming. Seeing him like that made everything feel real. One evening, as we sat together, he rested his hands on his stomach. It's weird, he murmured. I looked at him. What is? He smiled softly, knowing there's a tiny human inside me. Our tiny human. I felt a lump form in my throat. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. He turned to me. Do you think we'll be good parents? I didn't hesitate. I think we'll be the best. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. The road ahead. The months ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, uncertainties, and moments of doubt. But through it all, one thing was clear. We were in this together. And soon, we would be welcoming a little life into the world, a miracle that defied expectations, science, and everything we thought was possible. Little did we know, our journey was just beginning. The reality of pregnancy hits hard. I always knew pregnancy was tough, but watching Daniel go through it firsthand was an entirely different experience. I had read about morning sickness, mood swings, and weird cravings, but I wasn't prepared for just how intense it could be. The first few months had been manageable, but as we entered the second trimester, things started getting really difficult. Growing pains. One evening, as I was making dinner, I heard a loud groan from the living room. I rushed over to find Daniel slumped on the couch, one hand on his belly and the other gripping the blanket tightly. What's wrong? I asked, panicking. He exhaled slowly. Round ligament pain. I blinked. What? He rolled his eyes, clearly frustrated. You know how pregnant women get sharp pains in their lower belly as everything stretches. I stared at him. You're stretching. He glared at me. Yes, Sam, I am stretching. My organs are literally moving around. The doctors warned us about this. I sat beside him, rubbing his back. Okay. Deep breaths. He sighed, leaning into my touch. I know I signed up for this, but wow, I did not expect it to feel like someone is stabbing me from the inside. I kissed his forehead. You're doing amazing. He smiled, but I could tell he was exhausted. And honestly, so was I. The mood swings. The next morning, I woke up to find Daniel crying into a pillow. I panicked. What's wrong? Are you in pain? Did something happen? He turned to me, his eyes red and puffy. The baby is going to grow up so fast. I blinked. What? He sniffled. One day, they'll be all cute and tiny. And the next, they'll be going off to college. I'm not ready for that. I stared at him. Babe, the baby isn't even born yet. I know, but time moves so fast. He wailed, clutching his stomach. I rubbed my face, trying not to laugh. Okay. Deep breaths. We have literal years before college happens. He sniffled again. Promise we'll cherish every moment. I smiled, pulling him into a hug. Of course. Pregnancy hormones were no joke. Cravings and midnight missions. At 2 a.m. that night, I was rudely awakened by someone shaking my arm. Sam, wake up. I groaned. What's wrong? Daniel hovered over me, eyes wide. I need cinnamon rolls. I blinked, still half asleep. We don't have any. Then we need to go get some. I sat up. It's 2 a.m. He put his hands on his belly. Your child is demanding cinnamon rolls. I squinted at him. My child. He nodded seriously. They're clearly taking after you. You love cinnamon rolls. I sighed. You're impossible. But of course, 20 minutes later, I was standing in a 24-hour grocery store, bleary-eyed, holding a box of cinnamon rolls. Daniel was the happiest person alive when I brought them home, bonding with the baby. As exhausting as everything was, there were also beautiful moments. One night, as we lay in bed, Daniel suddenly grabbed my hand and placed it on his stomach. "Feel that?" he whispered. I held my breath. Then, a tiny movement, a soft flutter, like a butterfly trapped inside. I gasped. "That's the baby," he finished, his eyes shining. It was the first time I had actually felt them move. A lump formed in my throat as I realized just how real this all was. We were going to be parents, and no matter how tough the journey was, it would all be worth it. I held my breath. Then, a tiny movement, a soft flutter, like a butterfly trapped inside. I gasped. "That's the baby," he finished, his eyes shining. It was the first time I had actually felt them move. A lump formed in my throat as I realized just how real this all was. We were going to be parents, and no matter how tough the journey was, it would all be worth it. The challenges of expecting the unexpected. Pregnancy was supposed to be a beautiful journey, filled with excitement and preparation. And while that was true, nobody really talks about the hard parts. Daniel was now well into his third trimester, and things were getting real. The lighthearted cravings, mood swings, and nausea were one thing, but the physical strain was another story entirely. The weight of it all. One morning, I found Daniel in the kitchen, staring down at his feet. I frowned. "Everything okay?" He sighed dramatically. "I haven't seen my feet in weeks." I bit my lip, trying not to laugh. "Want me to describe them to you?" He scowled. "Not funny, Sam." I wrapped my arms around him from behind, resting my chin on his shoulder. "You're doing amazing, babe." He leaned into me. "I feel like a planet." I chuckled. "A very attractive planet." He groaned, but I could see the small smile on his face. The struggles of sleep. Sleep became a nightmare. Daniel couldn't get comfortable, ever. Every night, it was the same routine. He'd adjust his pillow, sigh in frustration, shift positions, sigh again, and repeat. One night, after his fifth attempt at getting comfortable, he sat up abruptly. "I'm going to sleep standing up." I blinked. "Excuse me." He looked at me dead serious. "It works for horses." I burst out laughing. "Babe, you are not a horse." "I might as well be. My back hurts, my feet are swollen, and I can't roll over without making sound effects." I hugged him, still laughing. "Come here. Let's try some extra pillows." Eventually, he found a semi-decent position, and I spent most nights just rubbing his back to help him relax. But I could tell he was exhausted. Doctor's appointments and unexpected news. Our routine checkups became more frequent. The doctors monitored Daniel's progress closely since he was part of an experimental pregnancy trial. One afternoon, as we sat in the clinic, the doctor studied the latest scans. "Everything looks great," she assured us. "The baby is growing as expected." Daniel sighed in relief. "That's good." Then, the doctor smiled knowingly. "Would you like to know the gender?" Daniel and I exchanged looks. We had originally decided to keep it a surprise, but at that moment I could tell he wanted to know. He nodded slowly. "Yes." The challenges of expecting the unexpected. Pregnancy was supposed to be a beautiful journey, filled with excitement and preparation. And while that was true, nobody really talks about the hard parts. Daniel was now well into his third trimester, and things were getting real. The lighthearted cravings, mood swings, and nausea were one thing, but the physical strain was another story entirely. The weight of it all. One morning, I found Daniel in the kitchen, staring down at his feet. I frowned. "Everything okay?" He sighed dramatically. "I haven't seen my feet in weeks." I bit my lip, trying not to laugh. "Want me to describe them to you?" He scowled. "Not funny, Sam." I wrapped my arms around him from behind, resting my chin on his shoulder. "You're doing amazing, babe." He leaned into me. "I feel like a planet." I chuckled. "A very attractive planet." He groaned, but I could see the small smile on his face. The struggles of sleep. Sleep became a nightmare. Daniel couldn't get comfortable, ever. Every night, it was the same routine. He'd adjust his pillow, sigh in frustration, shift positions, sigh again, and repeat. One night, after his fifth attempt at getting comfortable, he sat up abruptly. "I'm going to sleep standing up." I blinked. "Excuse me." He looked at me dead serious. "It works for horses." I burst out laughing. "Babe, you are not a horse." "I might as well be. My back hurts, my feet are swollen, and I can't roll over without making sound effects." I hugged him, still laughing. "Come here. Let's try some extra pillows." Eventually, he found a semi-decent position, and I spent most nights just rubbing his back to help him relax. But I could tell he was exhausted. Doctor's appointments and unexpected news. Our routine checkups became more frequent. The doctors monitored Daniel's progress closely since he was part of an experimental pregnancy trial. One afternoon, as we sat in the clinic, the doctor studied the latest scans. "Everything looks great," she assured us. "The baby is growing as expected." Daniel sighed in relief. "That's good." Then, the doctor smiled knowingly. "Would you like to know the gender?" Daniel and I exchanged looks. We had originally decided to keep it a surprise, but at that moment, I could tell he wanted to know. He nodded slowly. "Yes." The doctor turned the screen toward us and pointed. "Congratulations, you're having a little girl." Daniel's hands immediately went to his stomach. "A daughter." I reached for his hand, and in that moment, I swear I saw tears in his eyes. "We're having a girl," he whispered, as if saying it out loud made it real. I squeezed his hand. "She's already so loved." Preparing for parenthood. With the due date approaching, we went into full nesting mode. Baby clothes. Check. Nursery setup. Almost there. Baby name. Still undecided. One night, as we folded tiny onesies together, I asked, "Have you thought of any names?" Daniel smiled. "I like Emma." I nodded. "Emma Carter. That sounds perfect." And just like that, she had a name. The reality of labor approaching. The closer we got to the final weeks, the more nervous we became. The medical team had carefully planned a C-section procedure, since a natural birth wasn't an option in Daniel's case. But even knowing that, there was fear. One night, as we lay in bed, Daniel whispered, "Sam, what if something goes wrong?" I turned to face him. "Hey, look at me." He did. "You are in the best hands. The doctors have done this before. We have a plan. And no matter what happens, I'm right here." He took a shaky breath. "I just want to meet her, hold her, make sure she's okay." I kissed his forehead. "You will. Soon." Neither of us slept much that night. Because soon, our little girl would be here. And our lives would change forever. The final countdown. The closer we got to the due date, the more real everything felt. The excitement, the fear, the anticipation, it all came crashing down on us like a tidal wave. Daniel was officially in the 9th month, and let me tell you, he was ready to be done. The waiting game. Every day felt like a countdown to the big moment. Daniel's belly was huge, his feet were swollen, and he could barely walk without feeling completely drained. The simplest tasks, standing up, putting on socks, reaching for something on the counter, had become monumental challenges. One afternoon, I found him sitting in the nursery, rocking in the chair we had bought for late-night feedings. His hands were resting on his belly, and his expression was distant. I sat beside him. "What's on your mind?" He let out a long sigh. "It's weird, Sam. I feel so ready, but at the same time, I don't think I'll ever be ready." I took his hand. "That's normal, babe. Nobody's ever really ready to become a parent, but we'll figure it out, together." He smiled softly. Together. False alarms and panic mode. At 3 a.m., a loud groan startled me awake. I shot up in bed. "Daniel, He was clutching his belly, his face scrunched in discomfort. "I think I'm having contractions." My heart nearly stopped. "What? Now?" "It's happening." I leaped out of bed, scrambling for the hospital bag, tripping over my own feet in the process. Daniel, despite being in pain, managed to chuckle. "Calm down, Sam. It's probably just Braxton Hicks contractions." I blinked. "Braxton what?" He sighed. "False contractions. My doctor said this might happen. Let's time them before we rush to the hospital like maniacs." So we did. We sat in bed, watching the clock, counting the seconds between contractions. Eventually, they faded. I exhaled. Okay, not the real deal. But damn, I wasn't ready for that adrenaline rush. He smirked. "Better get used to it. The real thing isn't far off." I groaned. "I need sleep before I die of a heart attack." The moment arrives. Turns out, he was right. Just 4 days later, it happened. It was early morning when Daniel suddenly gasped and grabbed my arm. "Sam," his voice was shaky. "My water just broke." I went into full panic mode. Okay. Hospital. Now. Let's go." I grabbed the bags, helped him into the car, and broke about 10 traffic laws getting us to the hospital. The moment we arrived, the medical team rushed into action. They had been monitoring Daniel closely throughout the pregnancy, so they were well prepared for the planned C-section. But that didn't mean I wasn't terrified. I held his hand as they prepped him for surgery. "I love you," I whispered, squeezing his fingers. His eyes softened. "I love you too. See you on the other side." Then they wheeled him away. And I stood there, hands shaking, waiting for the moment that would change our lives forever. The longest wait of my life. Time had never moved slower. Every second felt like an eternity as I paced the hospital waiting room, my mind filled with worst-case scenarios. I couldn't lose him. I couldn't. Finally, after what felt like hours, a nurse appeared. "Mr. Carter." I rushed to her. "Is he okay? Is the baby okay?" She smiled warmly. "Come meet your daughter." My heart stopped. And then I ran. Meeting Emma, I walked into the recovery room. And there he was, Daniel, lying in bed, exhausted but smiling. And in his arms, a tiny, beautiful baby girl. My breath hitched. She was so small, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, her little hands curled into fists. I approached slowly, my hands shaking as I reached out to touch her for the first time. Daniel's voice was soft. "Meet Emma." Tears filled my eyes. I had never seen anything so perfect. I bent down and kissed Daniel's forehead. "You did it. You're amazing." He chuckled weakly. "We did it." I gently cradled Emma in my arms, and in that moment, nothing else in the world mattered. She was here, and our family was finally complete. A new chapter begins. Holding Emma for the first time felt like standing at the edge of the universe, staring into something vast, unknown, and absolutely breathtaking. She was tiny, fragile, a perfect combination of both Daniel and me. As I cradled her, she stirred, letting out a soft whimper before settling back into sleep. I looked up at Daniel, who was still lying in his hospital bed, exhausted but watching me with a soft, tired smile. "She already knows you," he murmured. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I hope she knows how much we love her." He chuckled weakly. "She will, every single day." The first days of parenthood. The hospital stay was a whirlwind of emotions. Daniel needed extra time to recover from the C-section, which meant I got a crash course in newborn care. Diaper changes. Absolute chaos. Swaddling. Nearly impossible at first. Sleep. What was that? One night, while rocking a very fussy Emma in the hospital room, I looked over at Daniel. He was fast asleep, the first real rest he'd gotten in days. I smiled. He had carried her for 9 months. Now it was my turn to take care of them both. By the time we were discharged, We were a mess of exhaustion, nerves, and excitement. Bringing Emma home felt surreal. I stood at the door of the nursery, watching as Daniel gently placed her in her crib for the first time. "Welcome home, little one," he whispered. She stretched her tiny fingers and yawned. I looked at Daniel, wrapping an arm around him. "We actually did it." He leaned into me. "Yeah, we did." The unexpected moments. Life with a newborn was chaotic and beautiful all at once. There were sleepless nights, diaper explosions, and moments where we just sat and stared at Emma, wondering how someone so small could change everything. Daniel, despite still recovering, refused to just sit back. One night, I woke up to find him standing over the crib, gently rocking Emma back to sleep. "You should be resting," I murmured. He smiled, his eyes soft with love. "I carried her all this time. It feels weird not to hold her now." I walked over and wrapped my arms around him. "You're the best dad already." He chuckled. "We both are." A love that changed everything. As the weeks passed, something incredible happened. We found our rhythm. We learned to function on barely any sleep. We celebrated the smallest victories, her first smile, her first grip on our fingers. We marveled at how much love one tiny human could bring into our lives. One evening, as the sun was setting, I found Daniel sitting on the couch, Emma nestled against his chest, sound asleep. I sat beside him, resting my head on his shoulder. "Did you ever think this would be our life?" He exhaled softly. "No, but I wouldn't change a thing." I kissed his cheek. "Me neither." And as we sat there, watching the world slow down, with our daughter safe in our arms, I realized something. This journey, every challenge, every doubt, every terrifying moment, had led us here. And this was just the beginning. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.